Hey, welcome to the UX Energy Podcast. We are greeted by Tom Scott, well-known design recruiter who's giving his top tips and advice on how to get that first job within UX. He shares really excellent advice and we're really excited to have him on the show. Let's see what he has to say. Welcome, Tom. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today. Tom, how's your day so far?
Yeah, good. Just in between meetings, it's nice to have a bit of a breather and a good chat.
Awesome. Glad to get you on. So, Tom, we've been connected a while on LinkedIn, but you've got quite a bit of an interesting resume from entrepreneur, design recruiter, big into fitness, spirituality. You've got a family. So Tom, in one sentence, how do you introduce yourself at dinner parties?
So I'm one of the co-founders of Fearless Group. So me and my partner Lauren set it up. We're a design group that has a talent business, community, and design studio. And then I also, outside of work, very much into spirituality, mental health, and I also have a young kid now. So I'm all grown up.
It's amazing, man. It's amazing. Yeah. And you probably started out, young and hungry. I think you're starting on doing fitness stuff on cruise ships right the way through to kind of now being, I guess, responsible adult and families and stuff. And so you've seen the hustle culture. You've seen the sort of the big push that you see now of a lot of people just trying to burn out and work hard. But you've done a lot around sort of mental health and kind of just good working. What's some of the sort of the work-life balance that you've found that works for you and could be good advice for other people who maybe you're a bit burnt out after COVID and stuff?
So I think the first thing is really define what is your purpose, what is your mission, what do you believe in, what are your values. And I think when you have that inner knowing, it's a lot easier to direct your energy on things that matter. I think a lot of people get burnt out by doing work that they're so internally disaligned with. I think that's one of the easiest ways to burn out from a internal, spiritual perspective. But I think in terms of tactical things, there's a lot of what I think I saw someone at Mind Value, it's an education platform used called rules, bullshit rules. And it's always work 70 hours, hustle, make as much money, side projects, etc. And I think not everyone wants to do that. So I think if you just want to, crack on with your work 40 hours a week, that's absolutely fine. I think there's always there's too much pressure nowadays to hustle and do extra stuff. But actually, if you want to just do the work, go home to your family, that's also completely fine. And I think one of the biggest things that I've been on in a personal journey is how to set healthy boundaries. How to set healthy boundaries not only with yourself, but also with your colleagues, with your family, with everyone. Boundaries are so, the number one way to burn out. And often, interestingly, not to go too deep into it because I know I haven't got too long, but people who, like myself, who experience childhood traumas and traumas in their past often have a really hard time setting boundaries. So I could go more into this, but maybe another time.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, and I think everyone's got to learn what works for them. But I think boundaries and just staying motivated, doing the things you love, always helps. Yeah, no, awesome. And for me, we've got a very sort of awesome audience that are new to UX and wanting to get into UX, and often a big question that they're asking is how do I create a good portfolio? And so we're now coming into them maybe burning out looking for jobs and being exhausted, so that's good advice. But what about then when they're trying to get their first gig, their first interview? What are some of the kind of key tips that you give for, I guess, doing a good portfolio? Because I think in the Medium article you talked about showing your personality, but what are some of the other important things to include from a recruiter like yourself?
I think, I wrote that article about 4 years ago. I think it needs I probably need to do an updated version, to be fair. I think first off, so portfolio is absolutely key. I always say the CV is you're dangling the carrot. and a LinkedIn page like dangling the carrot in front of the people's noses, and then portfolio is like actually how do you back it all up. So portfolio is super, super important at the early stage, not so much down the line. Talk about that another time. But in terms of portfolio to start with, it doesn't matter if you host it on PDF, website, Figma files. It doesn't matter. I think you just need to see work. First off, have 3 or 4 case studies, which is like super easy to super easy in terms of laying it out. Each case study should not be like a huge essay. I think it's got to be enough that you can skim read it, and then the interview is to go deeper into each case study. So it's like going back to when you're a kid at science and in science class, like the Bunsen burner, all that kind of stuff, and the experiment. You want to have like, what is the method that you used? Like, what is your hypothesis? Explain your process and what the final outcome was. I think if you're going the product design realm, you need to show the process, obviously, but also really emphasize what the execution was. I think I'm seeing a lot of portfolios which are like obsessive about UX and all this design thinking. And then you ask like, okay, well, did it ship? What was the execution? And nothing happened. So it's almost pointless if nothing gets shipped and there's no execution. So balancing both is really important. Even if you didn't do the visual design and final deliverable, I think you need to explain how your work translated into visuals and how it was executed, so a company can see how you can fit into a team, a product squad.
Yeah,
and also show personality. Yeah, personality is always that's not changed in 4 years. Like, how you can always have a really good about page, like, who are you? Why are you interesting? What do you want? What are you looking for? So they can get a feel for sort of the culture add that you're going to bring to their organization.
Yeah, and Tom, like, how do you then like stand out? Because there's a huge wave of people doing boot camps, people doing different training courses, and so often they're kind of just part of the cookie cutter conveyor belt, right? Of just they're all the same, and so like. You've still got personality, that's really important, and obviously showing sort of execution. But what are other sort of ways you'd recommend candidates to stand out to employers that they're like, wow, this is cool? Like, what's the differentiator factor, do you think?
Interesting. I think other ways to stand out could be how you come across on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn nowadays is like, it really is like your interactive CV. Everyone can see how you're interacting with content. Are you writing any content? Do you have any interesting thoughts that you can bring to their company? Other ways to stand out, like how you're approaching companies, is really like, are you just applying for a job online, seeing what sticks? How are you sort of following up with applications? Are you reaching out to the head of design or the design team, say why you want to work there, and just going above and beyond? Like, what is the standard way of doing things, and then just don't do it that way. Just go around outside the box as well as ticking the box.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually remember my dad giving me advice when applying for like retail jobs, like my first ever jobs, and he said always go to the manager, always hand them your CV, good eye contact, don't just give them to like the person on the door, because they just don't care. So it's like, always giving like a box of chocolates along with your CV or something like that, but a LinkedIn version. I love that. So like, and I know that we're only here for a short time, so I've just got a question that we could maybe spend a bit of time on. So Samuel is one of the young UX juniors, and that really, it's a real disappointment. So we talked about burnout, we talked about not standing out well enough, but the third sort of punch in the stomach for designers is, he says, like, would love to know why most companies don't fancy the idea of hiring junior UX designers. He'd like to know what ways lead designers or head of design in companies would be advocates for bringing in 1 or 2 juniors on board. So I'm like, you know that yourself, you've got to, place, talent in companies, but often it is, we need a senior, we need a lead.
Yeah.
what's happening there in the industry, and how can you, I guess, encourage people like Samuel who just need a bit of motivation as to kind of like, why can't I get a job as a junior?
It's a really good question. Couple of things. I think the first thing is, especially post-COVID, a lot of the business models are changing, a lot of new projects are arising, and companies often need people that can just crack on with it and have done this before and offer immediate value. Like greenfield projects, like they just need a good solid senior lead on there to execute. I think a lot of head of designs and lead designers are advocates of juniors. I don't know many people who don't want to work with juniors and bring them on, but often it comes down to a capacity issue. So for example, if you're understaffed with design in the design team, you just need like people that can take that workload off you. Often juniors, without meaning to, they add to your workload. So if you've already got a massive workload, they don't want to add to that. And often design teams, as they're scaling, they don't have the processes, the frameworks in place to enable an early stage design to actually be successful. I think that's one of the main, definitely one of the main reasons. And plus, if you can get a senior for say 70k, and that's your budget, you're going to try and get the most senior person possible to make that person look good and whatever. And I think it really is a huge investment of time and energy into early stage designers.
Yeah, that's really good. And so what's the solution then for people for juniors, right? So all you've done is you've just put the final nail in the coffin in a sense of just like, there's not space for that. So what's the hope bit?
Firstly, I think going back to like education companies, obviously UX has boomed and it's become this big thing where you can make lots of money, and a lot of the education companies have a lot to answer for in terms of they have pumped so many people into this industry, which is absolutely great, but it's causing a huge backlog of early stage science. I've been saying this for years, and I think there needs to be some more regulation there. But anyway, getting to the good bit, I think there's definitely early stage roles out there. I think targeting the more established companies that have large design teams who can take on juniors because they have capacity and they have seniors and mids to able to mentor and train them. Like BBC, for example, have a fantastic design internship program. There are companies out there that are doing it, especially post-COVID. More people come back to the office. There's a lot more desire to hire juniors again because during COVID, it's very hard to hire early stage designers remotely because you need to sort of be around people and learn from them as you're doing rather than waiting for a Zoom call. So there's definitely roles for early stage designers. I literally just hired one for our design studio from General Assembly. So there's definitely roles out there. I think there's not as many roles live on job boards because you put a job out, you'll get 400 applications and you don't have time to go through that. And you've always got juniors that you have in mind. So I think it's not just focusing on direct applications, but building connections and relationships with people. So, targeting 100 companies, going to figure out who the head of design is, who the senior designers are, make friends with them, ask for jobs, ask is there anything going right now, and then if there's not, 1 or 2 months down the line there will be, and then they'll think of you straight away rather than needing to post. So I think it's just a different way of approaching you, and you're not going to get obviously headhunted as a junior because it doesn't happen. Yeah. So you've literally got to go and put all the effort in to make it work rather than sitting back and just applying online and think of other ways to do it.
Yeah, I love that because I think there is a lot of passive on that, isn't it? Of just people who just apply for maybe 600 applications and they just wait and get frustrated. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I think sorry, I completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah, that was my bad. Sorry.
That's it. So it's just a hustle, and I think you've in a good hustle. There's different. Like you've just got a 9 to 5, absolutely caning. Like think of it as a job. Your job is to find a job. So go into Google Sheets, map it all out. Who the companies, who the head of design, and just make sure you contact every single one. And just make that your full-time job to find a job, rather than bits here and there.
That's golden advice. Golden advice. I like that. And so we talked about it then, just from the train here of the disappointments and stuff. What's some of the kind of good stuff we can talk about then? So I've got a question here. So I've really enjoyed my professional career so far, and just networking with recruiters. And so when you do get to a stage when you've got a juicy CV and you maybe have a bit of experience, for me, recruiters are great connections to have. What's the best way to people to engage with recruiters? How do you make their lives a bit easier, and how do you almost get to the top of their pile when it comes to sort of being a good candidate? What works for you, Tom, and from other experiences you've had?
I'm not as hands-on in recruiting anymore, because obviously running Fearless, but the team and my previous experience, it would have been people who are willing to come onto a call without necessarily looking for a job, and focus on just building that relationship to start with. People who definitely reply to recruiters and take the time to have a really polished portfolio and CV, and take their advice and then action that advice. But I wouldn't necessarily build relationships with like every recruiter. I think there's so many recruiters out there, so I would pick like 3 to 5 recruiters that you want to build relationships. Go meet them for coffee. Nothing like a physical meeting these days, physical coffee, and just get to know them, get to know the roles that they work on, their types of clients, because each recruiter has different types of clients. Some are more corporate, some more agency. So make sure you have a diverse range of recruiters, and just don't be like a recruiter basher. And there's not much, like, recruiters at the end of the day want to build relationships with candidates to ultimately place them and ultimately hit their targets. So you've got to figure out what is a placeable candidate and make sure you're a placeable candidate. And that is having an up-to-date portfolio, really sort of targeted LinkedIn page, and just active, like replying to them, and like really clear on what you want. That's really important, actually. Be clear on what you want, like what are your top 5 priorities for your next role. So the recruiter absolutely knows and can call you about the right role. Know you're not going to mess them around and all that kind of stuff, and go from there.
Tom, let's talk about you for a bit then. So just as we're kind of finishing up here, I know we've got other meetings to get to here, so appreciate your time. So Tom, tell me a bit more about then Fearless. Where are you going with that? Firstly, where did you start with this concept of growing this? It's really grown, I'm sure, from when you first started. Tell me about then where you want to be going, and about the story so far. That would be great, Tom. Yeah,
so cool, I get to practice the pitch. No, I'm joking. So Fearless is 3 years old. My background is design recruitment, so I started in like 2015, 2016. Always been obsessed with community, as you know, Jonah, from our interactions. And in 2019, I was at sort of crossroads, didn't know really what I wanted to do. I actually accepted a job from McKinsey, going to be a consultant there, and I was like, actually, I don't want to sell my soul. And my partner, who is also my co-founder, said, why don't we, try this Fearless thing? And so her background, Lauren, is a design director. So how we met was I was providing her talent, and she was training them up within BTE at the time. So the main problem that we're solving is through our companies, there's a massive need for design right now in the market. They can't hire quick enough. So our design studio come in and get projects off the ground, and then we backfill our teams with perm people for the companies, for our talent teams. And it's that sort of culture first mindset to building teams. And we train them up and all that kind of stuff. So we do that for like large companies, so like the London Stock Exchange, BP and whatnot. And then we have the community. So community is our sort of non-for-profit giving back. So we're working with a couple of education companies on scholarships. So we're about to hire 2 awesome designers in Nigeria into Fierce. And then we do like lots of events and conferences and stuff like that. Our mission is to design a better world, and what that means to us is multiple different things. It could be designing better talent, career experiences for people to get their dream jobs, which helps their families and their state of being. It could be designing a better product and service, designing better communities worldwide, and really bridging the gap of design education, because someone in such and such country does not have the means to go to General Assembly and be on the doorstep of Google's and Facebook's and whatnot. So how can we help them get the opportunities that we do here in London, New York, and places like that? So we do a lot. So we're essentially a design group that can do, multiple things. But essentially what we do is we build out design capabilities for teams.
Awesome.
Companies.
Awesome. And how are you finding that? Like, what's your dream, Tom? Like, for where do you see yourself, in 5 years' time? Like how big do you want to get? What's your goals?
So we're at 62 people now, across three countries, and we have a remote team as well, which is in more countries. Our growth plans, we want to stay independent. It's our family business. We don't want to be selling out to Accenture or anything like that. And we want to grow sustainably. I don't want to go through hyper growth and that type of vibe. Yeah. And just hire on quality, and just see where it goes. Like, we didn't plan on being at 62 people in 3 years, for example. We want to have there's a couple more businesses that we want to start, but right now we just want to absolutely nail design hiring and design studio, design agency work, and just see where it goes. We love what we do, right? We're not this is not for us to sell, or we love what we do. We love design. We love building careers for people. So we do have a plan, but it's loose.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Tom, how can people find more about Fearless? How can they join from a talent side, but also, more interested in the community? Where can we find you and find out more information about you?
So on our website, www.itsfearless.com/community, nice. You'll see all of our events coming up, access to our Slack group, and then obviously about our what we do from a talent perspective and design. We've got some really cool events coming up as well. So we've got people we're doing a series called The Day in the Life of a such and such designer. Nice. So we just did one with NASA, The Day in the Life of a NASA designer, which was amazing, by the way. What they do is just next level. We've got a few coming up with Instagram, Netflix designers, so it's going to be really interesting. We want to sort of go behind the scenes with these design teams. And then I'm actually relaunching my podcast, focused on design leadership. It's going to be called Focusing Around Elevating Design. So that's going to be amazing. Nice.
What's that called? We'll see if we can get connected with that.
It's going to be the Fearless podcast. Amazing. It's going to be interviewing digital leaders. Lots of various different subtopics, but I'll share more with you for sure at a later date.
That's great.
Just trying to define it right now. But as you know, starting a podcast it's not just there's an idea, it's going to do it. There's a lot more to it.
A lot of scheduling, a lot of planning. Oh, absolutely. It's been good so far. It gets fun so far.
Yeah.
Awesome.